Hello and welcome to the channel. I have an exciting announcement for you all today. So we have the public preview of integration environment and business process tracking today. So let's go ahead, let's dive in and see what that all means. So business process tracking and integration environment was discussed at Integrate 2023. Now at the time we had the name of Integration Spaces, that was the working term. Now we've gone to market with integration environment. The business process tracking remains the same. And the driver for these investments is that Azure Integration Services does provide a strong portfolio of services that allow you to go ahead and solve integration problems. But we have received some feedback from customers indicating that they would like to be able to holistically manage these resources, just because they can be spread across like several resource groups, subscriptions, etc. And so we wanted to build basically a single pane of glass that allows you to go ahead and group these specific resources that subsequently allow you to then manage them in a more meaningful way. And then also there was interest in how do we expose the underlying transactional business data to business stakeholders, hence the business process tracking itself. So both of these are available in public preview starting today. And let's go ahead and drill down deeper into it. All right, let's start with integration environment. So think of this as a new unified experience. What we have here on the image behind is the integration environment itself. Here's where you're going to go ahead and see all of your applications, all of your resources. You go ahead and provision an integration environment, much like you would other services. I'll show you that in the demo. And you can think of an environment as kind of like an IT landscape that you might have today, right? So you've got dev, test, staging, UAT, etc. Now, that might work for some organizations. For others, you might want to group it based upon a business domain. That's fine too. So marketing, finance, operations, HR, you can call it whatever you want, and you can create one or more of these things. It's not a single thing. You can create multiple instances of them. Then naturally, once you're in an environment, you can create applications. And so that's what we start to see in this more forward picture here. Is we've got our applications, we've got an automated metering reads application, we've got a customer service application, we've got a finance application. And so what we do here is we go ahead and just create the name of the application. We then go ahead and select resources from our subscription that then basically we're kind of building a model of what that application entails. Now, currently we do enforce the resources being in the same subscription. For some reason, if that doesn't work for you, do let us know. That was sort of to avoid sort of crosstalk, which is generally a no-no when it comes to these IT landscapes. But yeah, do let us know if there's feedback on that one. We did show monitoring, application monitoring at the Integrate conference. So in case you are wondering where's application monitoring, that is still something we are envisioning, that we are working on. It's not part of this particular preview. But that is still very much top of mind and aligned with our strategy. Now, a few other tidbits about integration environment. So this is something that sits on top of deployed resources. At this point, you don't deploy resources into an environment. That is something that could come in the future, but for now, this is something that is layered on top. It is also something that you do create through the portal. We do envision support for CI/CD in the future as well, but for now, it is something that is in the portal itself. So it is separate from your code and your underlying infrastructure. So yeah, that is sort of integration environment. We'll go ahead and provision one of these when we get into the demo as well. All right, so let's talk business process tracking, and you will see this in the demo itself as well. But just wanted to give you some background. So what we've got here is we're in the Azure portal and we've created a business process. And now, as the business subject matter expert, we want to go ahead and define our business process and the various stages within that business process. So stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, etc. Now, at each particular stage, we want to identify properties And these properties represent key business data that we would want to track at that particular stage. So if we look on the screen, we've got a ticket created stage, and during that stage we want to capture the customer name and the customer phone number. Now, once we've gone ahead and done that for all of the various stages, we envision an integration developer coming along and going to implement tracking. Now, you can think of this as kind of like a mapping exercise where we've got this conceptual business process, and then we have the actual physical implementation that exists within our logic apps. So for a particular stage, we would have the ability to select a logic app, select a workflow, and then click on the select an action to map to the stage link. Once we click on that link, we'll be transitioned to an experience that includes the Logic App Designer. Now, this Logic App Designer will be loaded in a read-only fashion, and we will be asked to select the particular action for which we want to go ahead and collect our data properties and then emit them to the backend data store. Now, in this case, the backend data store is Azure Data Explorer. When you do create an application, you are asked to basically select your ADX instance, so it is bring your own. And once you've gone ahead and done that, then when you go ahead and deploy these business processes, we'll create the appropriate table for you. And then what we'll do is we will generate a tracking profile, and this tracking profile will be added to the respective logic apps. And then at runtime, we have a job that will be looking at these particular actions and then collecting the appropriate data properties and then sending them off to ADX. And the experience is quite snappy. You should see those events arriving in your ADX instance quite quickly. So definitely interested in feedback around the speed of this as well. So we go ahead and we perform this mapping for all of the different stages that we have in place. We go ahead, we deploy that business process, and today that happens in the portal. And then basically you go ahead and we'll go ahead and create the table in ADX, and then we'll place these tracking profiles in the logic apps, and then we'll start to collect this data. Now, when you come to this view inside of the business process, it's called transactions, you'll see all of the different transactions that have taken place, basically sorted by this particular business identifier, which is kind of like a case number, a ticket number. You want something that's unique to your transactions so that we can go ahead and assemble this view. And then what you can do is click on a particular stage, and we're going to show you the data that was collected. So this will all make more sense once you do see the demo, but this is kind of a high-level overview. Now, what's also interesting, we often get asked, okay, so what if we want to access this data from outside the Azure portal? And the good news there is because it is your ADX instance, you have full access to that data. You can go ahead and create workbooks, Azure Monitor workbooks, or even use Power BI to go ahead and suck these details into your own tool. But this is currently the experience. Now we're going to go ahead and take a look at a demo. I wanted to give a little bit of context about the demo. So this is a scenario that's inspired by one of our customers, and they're a utility company, and they want to orchestrate their business process across multiple different systems. So we've got a CRM system, we've got a work order management system, we've got a marketing or a customer communication system. These are the individual stages we have: ticket created, work order created, etc. And this is the tracking data that we want to go ahead and track at each of those particular stages. Now, while this is going to look like a very linear business process, we do support for parallelism and conditions, so you can go ahead and model your business process in that manner as well. Now, the idea is that as we sort of transition from one state of the business process to the other, capture the data, it all lands in Azure Data Explorer, that we can go ahead and take a look at that data. So without further ado, let's go ahead, let's jump into a demo. Let's see integration environments in action. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is create an integration environment. Probably the easiest way to go ahead and do this is go to your top search bar, just type in integration. You should see integration environments appear. Go ahead and click on that. We can now then go ahead and click on the create button, and we will select our subscription. Okay, so I've gone ahead, populated my subscription, resource group, name, and region. Can now go ahead and click on create. Okay, that should only take a few seconds, and then you'll see a notification showing up indicating that it's been created. So here's kind of our landing zone. It's blank, so there's not a whole lot to talk about just here, but we can go ahead now and create an application. So we're going to go ahead and create an application. We're going to create new. Our scenario is going to be related to the customer service power outage. So we'll do customer service power outage. Now you will notice that we don't support spaces here in the name, hence me using dashes. But just there'll be validation that you run into if you try to. So let's go ahead, let's add resources. So these are resources that we want to add to our particular application here. And so we've got two choices: from within the subscription, or if we had already added resources into the environment. So I'm going to go ahead and select Logic App. So these are the three different resources that we do support. For now, this is something that I do anticipate will grow, but for now it's Logic App Standard, API Management, and Service Bus. So let's go ahead, select Logic App, then we'll select our particular Logic apps that we're interested in. Alright, so I've added the two Logic apps that I'm interested in. Now we can go ahead and add other resources. So if we wanted to select our API, we could go ahead and select an API as well. Now this is going to be less meaningful at this point, but as we start to include support for application monitoring, that's where this will be even more valuable, having these resources added to your application. So next up, we want to include our business process tracking. So this is where we need to go ahead and select our ADX instance. So you do need to make sure ADX instance is up and running. Okay, so I've got my cluster selected. Always good to add tags. And now we can review and create. So this should just take a few seconds as well, and then we should have our application created. Okay, if we refresh our applications, we should see that we have our application there. We can go ahead and click into it. And we should see all of our resources showing up in this table. We can actually go ahead and expand them as well. And see the various resources. Now let's shift gears. Let's talk more about business processes. So let's go ahead and click on business processes. We are now ready to create our business process and can do so from clicking on the create new button. Now here we need to provide the name of our business process. So we'll just call this customer service power outage. And we can provide a description of my description. Now here we've got a business identifier, and what we're going to do with this is going to be our unique value. So whenever we go ahead and emit a message, we need to include this business identifier, as it will help us correlate this data in ADX, our data store. So I'm going to use case number here, but anything unique will work. So things like order numbers, ticket number, case ID, problem ID, things like that. We're going to use a data type of string. And we can now go ahead and click on the create button. Okay, so we now see it showing up in our table here. You can kind of think of it like this. When you've got a business process, there's typically kind of two modes, arguably maybe three. So we've got a draft mode, which is what we're in right now. We've got a deployed mode. So once we've made changes and we've deployed those changes, that's going to represent a deployed state. We'll see a green check mark here. And then that third state that I alluded to was when there's pending changes. So when you've got a deployed business process and you need to then make some subsequent changes to it, but you're not ready to deploy those right away, that's kind of like that third stage. And that's where you would go ahead and see pending changes showing up here. You'd also see a last deployed timestamp, and then obviously the last modified timestamp as well. And we'll talk about this icon in a little bit. So let's go ahead, let's open up our business process. All right, so we've got our business process, and we are going to go ahead and model that business process that I showed you previously. So once again, this is that business process. We're going to create a stage for ticket created, work order created, etc. And then we're going to go ahead and add these different properties at the appropriate stage. All right, so let's start with stage one. We're going to call it ticket created. And we'll provide our description. Then we'll go ahead and add our properties. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and set up the rest of the stages. I don't think you want to watch me type for those minutes, so I'm just going to pause the recording and I will show you what I come up with here shortly. Okay, so I've gone ahead and added all of these stages. If we go ahead and take a look at them, you can see I've got different properties for them at each particular junction. Now, one thing to be aware of is that if we want to have parallelism, we can support that as well. What we want to do is just go ahead and click on the node above, and then we could go ahead and add a parallel stage if we want. Not going to do that in this case, but certainly it is supported if you want to go down that route. Okay, so we're going to save, and so like this is at the point where typically like a business subject matter expert or an architect or a business analyst would have performed that work. And we would want to hand it off to a technical developer or an integration developer to go ahead and to start perform that mapping. So what is this mapping I refer to? So if we go ahead and start with the first stage, we click on it. We've got this show data source. So we can click on now show data source and then select the particular logic app and the workflow that we can go ahead and find this information from, and then we can go ahead and click on select an action to map to stage. Now this is a pretty important step because we need to select the point in the workflow where we'd want this message sent. So basically we're going to send a message to service bus basically as part of our process to kind of hand off, and so this would make sense for us to go ahead and send a message to the business process tracking store, which is ADX, basically indicating that we've now finished the first stage. Now we need to provide these data values here, these properties, and we can use dynamic content, and probably the easiest way to do this is just to go ahead and search. So here I'm going to just search for name. So I've got a customer name. I'm just going to pull it from this canonical message. I could pull it from the trigger if I wanted as well, but here I'm going to go ahead and select the phone number. We'll go ahead and grab it from that canonical message. We've got the email as well, and we can go ahead and grab it there. Now do note we do have the support for expressions as well, so if you need to go and do expressions, you can certainly go ahead and do that. And then last but not least, we also have that business ID. Here you can't use the expressions, but you can still use dynamic content. And I'm going to do a search for ticket number, and we're going to go ahead and get this from the trigger. Doesn't have to be, but that's where we're going to go ahead and get it. So let's go ahead and create, or basically save that configuration. And then here we'll go ahead and click on save. And now we've basically got all of that mapped. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of that mapping. And once again, I'll show you once that's complete. All right, so I've gone ahead and done the mapping. So we can just go ahead and take a quick look at a few of these, right? So I've got the work order created. I've got, a specific workflow for that. I've got all of the values there. Same thing if I head over to the workflow, different workflow that's being used, and I've got, the data being mapped here as well. So I have this set up for each of my particular workflows. Now, to one thing that might be of interest is like here I'm using a second logic app, a secondary workflow, and we're certainly able to capture details from multiple workflows. And so here was that last one as well. So we're all good. We can go ahead and save our business process. And then as the integration developer, and provided I have access to the logic apps where these tracking profiles will get saved to, I can go ahead and click the deploy button. So that is important to understand here is underneath the hood, that those mappings, we call those tracking profiles, we will go ahead and generate a JSON file. We will go ahead and put a copy of the tracking profile specifically for that logic app, and we'll go ahead and save that in the artifacts folder. So if you've used Data Mapper before, we've got schemas and maps that exist inside artifacts. So we have a new folder called tracking profiles where we're going to go ahead and place these JSON files. So I'm going to go ahead and click on deploy here. Now I do have the ability to go ahead and provide a table name inside of ADX. Now you can see here I've already got a table name for this, and this is all based upon like the name of the business process. So I'm going to just add another identifier here, just so this is different. You can reuse them. We do like track the data differently, so we can sort of differentiate one from the other. I think it really comes down to more of like that RBAC and whether or not you want to share a table. You can, but it might be easier, and it is your data, to be able to manage it separately. So kind of we defer to you. If you do want to use an existing table, you just have to enable this check mark. So I'm going to now go ahead and click on deploy. Now, assuming I don't have any sort of issues, validation errors, this should get deployed properly. We'll go ahead, we'll create the table in ADX. We will create a couple app settings, including kind of like a connection string, like we use managed identity under the hood, but the coordinates of our ADX will get stored within the logic apps, and then those tracking profiles that I just talked about as well. Now, if we head back over to business processes, we do see the green check mark here. So now we have a deployed version that is available. All right, so we're going to go ahead and use a chatbot to log our trouble ticket, our power outage ticket, and then we're going to use a Power App to move through the various states of our business process as we go ahead and complete those various stages. So we're going to just issue an utterance in the PVA world called I have a power outage. Chatbot's then going to ask for some additional information. We need to validate our account by providing our email address, validate our site ID, and then add some additional information. Okay, so at this point, we'll go ahead and create a ticket. So this ticket is going to be case 1123. Okay, so we've just kicked off our business process, so it should really be in progress. So how we go ahead and view transactions is we click on this little table with the magnifying glass. Okay, and then we are in the transactions view, and we have a couple filters. We can filter on our ticket number, and we can also filter on our time range. So here, the past 30 minutes, we have our case 1123 available to us. So let's go ahead, let's click on this link. And when we do so, we're going to see an overlay of our business process and the underlying data. So here we've got a ticket created and our work order created. So let's go ahead and click on these. We can see the properties that we had previously gone ahead and tracked. So that looks good. Now what we need to do is move our business process along. So in order to do that, we're going to take advantage of a Power App. All right, so I'm in a Power App and I can see I've got a case 1123. That's the work order that we were working on before. And now I'm going to be the dispatcher and I need to dispatch this to a field technician. So we're just going to assign this to Steve Smith and we'll go ahead and click the submit button. So now we should be in that dispatched status. If we flip back to our business process tracking transactions, we should see that reflected. So let's go ahead, let's hit refresh. And we can see that we've got it dispatched. So this happens pretty instantaneously. And so we're definitely interested in feedback on that if you're sort of seeing that type of speed, but it generally is pretty quick, pretty snappy, and you should see this pretty close. Well, I won't say real time. Real time is a loaded term, but very, very quickly. So do let us know how that works out for you all. So let's go back to the Power App. Let's sort of move this through the end of our process. All right, so let's come in here. We're going to now say that the technician is on site. They have to do a safety assessment. They've noticed a large dog is in backyard, and we'll go ahead and click save. Now the work's been complete, so we can go ahead and update that. We want to also describe the materials that were used. So we had to replace a power pole, so we're going to capture that, and then we have to provide the material ID as well. So we'll go ahead and save that. Now our work order is complete, and we should have communicated this outage has been resolved back to the customer. So let's flip back over to our business process transactions. All right, so we're back over in Azure. Let's go ahead and hit the refresh button. And sure enough, we can see that we had our technician on site. There was a large dog in the backyard. We've got the power pole and the materials ID captured. And we also have the customer communication details as well. So that basically explains or shows how we can go ahead and use Business Process Designer to go ahead and construct our business process. We then showed the data mapping that takes place so that we can go ahead and create a tracking profile. And so that will help us sort of map the business process to the actual implementation where we can find that data in the particular logic app. And then once we deploy and we have this runtime experience, we can now go ahead and find our records and then basically go ahead and inspect it. And obviously this happens pretty quickly, but you know, in the real world where there's like minutes or hours that take place between these various stages, this could actually become quite useful for customers as they try to gain insights into where there might be bottlenecks within their business process. So that is kind of the initial walkthrough of integration environment and business process tracking. Look for more videos on the channel where I go through more capabilities. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the comment section. Happy to go ahead and answer them. Thanks again, and take care.